Welcome to the Public Voice Salon. We are an open dialogue on education, the arts, and social change, and we're so delighted to be spending the hour with Mr. Harold Channer, who is our good friend and who is our mentor and who premiered his TV show, Conversations with Harold Channer, in the early 1970s in New York City on public access, and has done over 2,000 interviews with some of the leaders in our world in terms of intellectual life, academia, culture, business, some of the leading thinkers and movers and shakers. Harold has had them as guests on his show. And Harold, what I love about Harold is that he is very interdisciplinary. He is not a specialist, he's a generalist. He's interested in all kinds of knowledge, and he loves the art of conversation. We've been spending about an hour here in his lovely home that he shares with his girlfriend Maggie in Midtown Manhattan in the Garment District. And it's just such a pleasure to delight in a conversation with Harold in an age that I believe you can call it that we have a crisis in conversation in our country. The other night I was at Columbia University and there was a lecture by a woman named Sherry Turkle who wrote a book called Being Alone Together, which is a criticism of the technology and how with the cell phones or with the smartphones, everybody's looking and texting and looking at these machines and these gadgets, and they've lost the art of having a real open, unscripted conversation. And if you look at a lot of the media today and the talk shows and the news, a lot of that is scripted and sound bites. But with someone like Harold, there is no preparation. There is just an open dialogue that has an element of spontaneity, and you're teaching us this, Harold, and we really appreciate that. But we want to spend a lovely hour with you and get a sense of your thinking and your history and your biography. And how did you get started in television? I heard there was a story that you were called down to Washington, D.C., that there was some kind of governmental situation, and why don't we start with that? This was back in the 50s, I think it was. Hubert Humphrey was part of this?
It wouldn't have been back that far. Oh, you want me to hold it? Yeah, well, I can if you want, yeah.
The 60s, yeah.
Yeah, no, it would have been, well, let's see it at the beginning. I was born in 1935. So I had, I had to do time in the military briefly. I was drafted between the Korean and the what was to become the Vietnam. And I served them. Then I went to university. And I was in a middle class family with the best family in the history of the universe, I believe. Without a doubt, the best mother ever on this planet. And also two wonderful older sisters who were very solicitous of because I was the only son and everything. And it was intellectually stimulating and very rich, but it became the end of the war. I was 10. And and then I lived in that environment. And at that time, Detroit, I was in Detroit, Michigan. That's where I was born and raised. And it was I'm not sure what it means exactly, but because it had been the arsenal of democracy in the Second World War, Willow Run and all of that, I think it had the highest, what would be called per capita income of anywhere in the country, was Detroit. It was a beautiful place, green trees everywhere and everything and that sort of thing. But that's where my background was, and it was intellectually stimulating. We had the Harvard Classics, and we had the Encyclopedia Britannica, talk around the dinner table, encouragement, laughter, fun, poker playing, that kind of thing. It was a really rich environment.
And there was a piano, wasn't there a piano?
There was a piano that my mother would play. It's so corny. It doesn't happen anymore. I don't know there's some things I don't think should ever go. And one of them is having a mother who plays the piano and knows how to play all the George M. Cohan songs and play the songs, and the family stand around, arm around each other, and sing.
My grandmother had a piano. My grandmother had a piano.
Did you stand around and sing as a family?
We did. We said, well, when I visited my grandmother, and she had the piano rolls, and there were songs like "Ain't She Sweet," "See You Coming Down the Street." I'll ask you very confidentially, ain't she sweet? Ain't she nice? Look her over once or twice. Yeah, well,
and
ask you very confidentially, ain't she nice?
Hey, 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 hey! Yes, That's right.
That was we
But
were
we would
singing to
sing.
Claudia. We were
Yeah,
singing
right.
to Claudia,
Absolutely.
who was filming us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
okay.
That's right. But she would play. We'd do it. So that's the background. It was really good, and so
Okay.
we were very interesting. And then I did a university, went to the college, and I was just interested. I've always been interested in things. I guess venturesome, did a lot of traveling around and that kind of stuff. But intellectually, I went to the Wayne University in Detroit. It's coming on again. It was a major university. My family had all gone to University of Michigan mostly there, my dad and grandmother and everything. But I got interested in things. I had to go in the Army at 19 years old. I was drafted, so I got that out of the way, and then traveled around Europe for a summer and out through North Africa, came back through North Africa and so on. Went and spent the summer of '58, that would have been the year that it became a state. We drove to Alaska. A friend of mine, boy, that was a long drive, the Alcan Highway. It drove all the way to Alaska, and then he stayed in Anchorage and did something civilized, like something working with a newspaper. And I went out in the wilderness and just lived in the wilderness. I was stupid is what it was. I was really stupid because they got big bears and things there, but I was too dumb to know. But I had Walden in my pocket, Thoreau, and nature and all that kind of stuff and everything, and had a wonderful summer up there. Got stuck up on Mount McKinley.
How old were you, Harold?
Well, I would have been, 23? I guess I would have been 23. It's 58 at the state. That was the last state, I guess, that came in, or it was Hawaii. I'm not sure. But it had just been made a state. Alaska had just been made a
If I could
state.
just parenthetically interject, Harold, that, in other words, Harold is having these wonderful adventures here, climbing Mount McKinley, going here and there.
I could tell you it wasn't.
It wasn't Mount
In
McKinley?
the end.
Okay. But anyway, the thing is, young people today, Harold, every second of time is taken up with something. Their lives are micromanaged. There's a problem in the economy. They're studying narrow subjects like marketing and business, what's not general. They're not getting the intellectual stimulation. So we could learn by going back to people like you and your stories. So go back to your biography.
Well, all right, that's all. I'll just tell you, I went and okay, I won't bother, but I did. I'm stupid. I was stupid, and Mother Nature, because I was sleeping on the ground and eating. They have blueberries. You put your jacket on the ground. This is just a wild thing.
Okay.
And you shake the jacket. You would have a jacket full of blueberries, and things grow really big there in the Matanuska Valley. They got great big tomatoes and all this stuff. Because
Where is this again? This is
in Alaska, outside of
Alaska. Okay,
Anchorage.
wow,
It was
wow.
Anchorage, is a big town. But I went up and went into the, with gym shoes. I mean, I wasn't equipped.
Yes.
Either mentally but I was just singing the praises of nature, Valderie.
Yes,
And I went into the Mount McKinley area. It's now been named something else, but Mount McKinley. And without telling anybody I was there, I just walked, because I was just sleeping on the ground. And it had been beautiful weather, August and everything. And I just walked maybe 4 or 5 days up Mount McKinley, which is a dumb thing to do. It'd be hard for people to realize now, because everybody knows where everybody else is. There was no such thing as a phone. There was no way of having smoke signals or anything to communicate. And I went up there, and I got stuck. And all of a sudden, it had been beautiful weather, just gorgeous, with the creatures and everything. And then all of a sudden, it changed, and it came. A northeaster came, and it would not let up. It was snow, hail, sleet, and whatnot. And I had walked up 4 days, up the mountain, up to where there were no trees. There were no trees. It was just glacier. Now, that's stupid. Now, the thing is, you can be young and, push the envelope, and but you can also be stupid. I was stupid. And I came, and I all of a sudden stood there on that mountain. I said, what am I doing here? And I threw the book down, the thing, and I had to walk all the way down. I don't remember how the hell I did it. I had to walk on slippery rocks, and they would not let up and everything.
God.
It was really something. So I never felt quite the same about nature after that.
That was a transformative experience.
It was a transformative experience for me. I came to like cement and cities. I like cities, and I like civilization. I don't particularly trust. Anyway, that's all water under the bridge. But then I became a student. Then I became a good student, I guess. I was very interested in everything. I'm interested in virtually, there's nothing that doesn't interest me. And as you indicated,
Yes.
I've always been very interested from the get-go, I guess. I did the work in geography. It's pretty inclusive and everything. You can start taking in other kinds of things and everything. But then a lot of history. If you combine history and geography, you can include a lot. But what I came upon pretty quick, early, relatively young, I was always interested in the intellectual process itself of learning. It sounds corny, doesn't it?
Not at
But
all.
I was really interested in that, and I was never interested in what the learning might bring me, like a goal. It was just I'd be interested in something, and I'd run that sucker down. And this was before, I know it'd be fine for a lot of the younger people watching, this is before there was anything called Wikipedia or anything. You had to go to a library, get the librarian and get a little number and get a stack. Remember stacks? We spent a lot of time in the stacks. But I was autodidactic, I guess is the term. That's the term that means self-motivated.
Great word. I love that word.
And it wasn't tied into any exteriorized goal.
Right.
I was a little bit upset. It seemed to me that a lot of the people that I was like, when I did the doctoral candidate, I did a master's there, and then I did a doctorate down at the work down in that was at University of Indiana in Bloomington. Bloomington. It was a great yellow dog used to sleep there. I loved that dog at the barber shop. There was a barber shop, and it was a southern thing. And it was just great. They had a barber shop with a rickety wood, and you'd go in there and it had a pool table.
Reminds me of Andy Griffith. It reminds me of Mayberry, right?
This is southern Indiana.
Yeah, sure.
Breaking Away, you know the film Breaking Away?
No.
Oh, it's a great film.
Is it?
Really good about southern Indiana. It's got a lot of lessons and everything. But they had this great barber shop it was like a Civil War type kind of central thing. And then you walk down, there was a wooden things. It's like something out of a John Wayne movie or something.
Oh, yes,
and you went in, you had the Police Gazette, and you had an old yellow dog that would curl up and go, and you had a soda pop thing full of hot pop.
Oh boy!
And it was just wonderful, really great. It was it there, and then I was still interested in everything and I was very motivated just simply by learning. I guess I've always been interested in learning, and it seems to me the time we're coming into now is a paradise for autodidactism. I would suggest that is somebody who's just interested in learning, and also if you're interested in learning, well, there's a lot to know. That's a joke.
Okay.
I mean, when you think about it, you think of, all of history and all the science and all the mathematics and all of this kind. It's a lot. So how do you deal with it? One of the things is you don't be motivated by outward incentive, like say a grade or a possible position or an advantage of a hedge fund group to get a quarter point over prime in order to get, the kind of outer directed things that motivate a lot of human activity, it seems to me. Never interested in that, just interested in a lot of different things, right? And the conversation was that way, and that's the way I went. Then I very soon came upon this fellow, Bucky Fuller. I think maybe a number of people might know, and also came upon a concept that is a little hard, and it's still, I guess it's motivated me since I'm just reminiscing now.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
But I just want. See, what's wonderful. The wonderful challenge about interviewing Harold is because Harold is a great interviewer. So when you're interviewing the host, the great host who has had 2,200 shows, who can pontificate from now until the cows come home, it is a challenge to get the microphone back. But we want to have a nice dialogue. I love you, Harold. We love you. We want to have a back and forth. And we want. It's like riding a bronco. It's like trying to rein in and Harold to get the microphone back. But no,
Sorry,
but no, don't apologize. Don't apologize, Harold. First of all, I want to say, in my life, in my terms of being a host of this show,
Your show is really good, and Claudia is what helps make it that way. I want you to remember that. Do you?
I know you remind me all the time, and it's absolutely right. It's true. As a child growing up in Edgewater, New Jersey, watching television, Johnny Carson was one of my heroes. Okay, Jay Leno, these are my heroes. David Letterman. Okay, in terms of people who can give good interviews, right? But also David Susskind. I grew up watching David Susskind. Was in an intellectual direction. Bill Moyers, and I put you, Harold, in the category of all of these men.
Well, I don't know.
I'm sorry. In my mind, you are somebody who is as good, and in some ways better and different in your way, because you're intellectual, okay, unabashedly so. There's no preparation. There is just spontaneity. And another person who was very spontaneous was Joe Franklin, who was a
Joe Franklin.
mutual friend of ours. Thank you for introducing us to Joe Franklin. Talk a little bit about Joe.
Well, Joe was just passed recently. He's been here. Joe's been here. He was here before, and he was a television pioneer, and he was doing television way back when television didn't exist. He was doing television, getting started, and one of the problems was they were in competition with the movie industry. You know from movies a lot.
Right.
And they had a movie industry, and then that's part of the technological development. I had mentioned Fuller before.
Yeah.
Fuller was a great reader of the implications of technology on the human condition, and he was also a design scientist, as he called it, and he was an omnivore. He was interested in everything. One thing I'd say about an interview, in my way of thinking, I may be wrong, but I think it's a conversation is different than an interview.
Yes.
And in my way of thinking, a conversation bespeaks spontaneity.
Yes.
So we should be spontaneous.
We should be. And another mutual friend of ours is Mr. Stanley Aronowitz, who I was so excited. He's great. And I got a call from Claudia the other day. She said, put on the TV, put on the computer. Stanley's on TV right now. He's on TV with Cornel West and with Jim Vetros. Stanley and Jim have a TV show now. It's a new show. And at the age of 82, Stanley Aronowitz has premiered as a co-host of a television show on MNN. So he's part of the MNN community as well. He's a mutual friend of ours. Yes.
Yeah, when does he air? I'd like
Claudia.
Last Thursday.
last Thursday. Is he doing a regular thing?
It's regular.
We're getting to have a hell of a faculty over there. You know, they're really getting good. You got Richard Wolff. He's
Wolff.
down in New School, but he's got a regular program. You got John Braden and Claudia. Yeah, and you got a lot of good stuff going on there. And then so public access is really an important kind of thing that came, and everything was a godsend for me because there was a place where it was. I should go pick up again, maybe since it's for me, on this Fuller fellow. Buckminster Fuller was an absolute angel in my way, and he was very, very inspirational in my thinking. So I made a lot of changes. You're going around when you're 20, 19, teenager, you got a lot of different thoughts going on and everything, but you begin to get a focus intellectually. And what I got on was I like to be interested in everything. But you get thinking about things, and then you follow the muse. The muse is something that carries you in terms of your own curiosity about something that goes from one thing to another, and the link between them. And it can get you to be thinking what they call systems. That is, was it Norbert Wiener, the great cyberneticist and so forth, who Kurzweil talks about all the time.
Ray Kurzweil.
Ray Kurzweil is great and everything, but he said that what's happening evolutionarily within the human condition and so forth, among other things, we are being blessed, cursed, whatever, by a phenomena that's following Moore's law. In fact, it's going faster than Moore's law. It's going exponential, the capability of the exponential increasing of capability of communication to where we're being inundated with information or access to information. And one of the things that it does in cybernetics is information overload. You can be overloaded with information. Overload
yes.
in some, let's say, in something.
Yes.
Permits pattern recognition. Now, pattern recognition is a very important part of cybernetics, as I understand it, and that means it gives way, or it gives a means by which somebody can begin to think not specialized. And again, back to the thinking about a conversation, what you're reaching for is something that's spontaneous and not scripted and not preset in terms of a goal or something. But it's open to systems thinking, and Mr. Fuller was magnificently that way. Another person was Marshall McLuhan up in Toronto. He was very influential. We used to visit with him every spring from 68 to 71. I could never get what they say in the Yiddish, Hamish. But he was really interesting. Paul Levinson, my friend, got very close. But he was also understanding the implications of the technological development, the extensions of our consciousness that technology is, particularly informationally and what's going on. And it may be introducing us into a very unique moment in evolutionary terms, not just political terms or historical terms, but evolutionary terms. It may be that this is a period of human evolution as part of the broader evolutionary process of which we're all a part, that is heralding or is signaling a qualitative, not a quantitative, but a qualitative transformative moment. Now that's something that's really worth thinking about in systems terms.
Well, you say it's heralding a transformative moment. I think it's heralding. Harold, as in Harold Channer. Heralding a new.
You live near Herald Square.
Harold Square. Herald.
Hark the Herald Angel Sings. Should I change my name to Hearld? Hark the Herald Angel Sings. Should I do it? Should I not, John? I need content.
We'll talk about it. We're going to have coffee after the show. We brought some cupcakes from the Cupcake Cafe under the Port Authority, the wonderful Cupcake Cafe. We brought some cupcakes. But when you were talking about this scriptedness, okay, I think there's a revulsion in the country against that right now in terms of politics, against the overscriptedness. And I'll tell you why. In the Republican debates, one reason that Donald Trump has been doing so well is that he's not rehearsing. He's just showing up and he's being himself, he's winging it. And compared to him, the other candidates, they all sounded like robots. You know, they sounded like, and they're sort of dropping out one by one because they seem like they're just it's very canned. The Republicans specifically, you know. But even I honestly, I'm going to say this right now, I think Hillary sounded very scripted and very robotic. And when Bernie Sanders talks, I feel like there's a real human being there. I feel like there's somebody there that's real. I feel like when Hillary talks, it's just too perfect. She's something very scripted and perfect. And I don't want our show ever to be scripted and perfect. I like it to be imperfect and open and real. And you are teaching us this art of conversation, Harold. You are. But I want to go back to your show now for people watching us to educate them about your show, about Conversations with Harold Channer, and some of the guests that you've had over the years. And I'm just going to read a couple here. I wrote down some of the guests, some of the names of the people who stand out to me, and I'm going to, and these are people who are in so many different fields, you know, science and technology and intellectual.
Recognition between them.
Well, here's some names.
You're not getting into one thing. Okay. And that's something that I'm afraid is going on intellectually at the university and in intellectual endeavors. It's all becoming highly specialized.
Okay. So you had Caspar Weinberger, Judith Malina.
Oh, she just passed.
Founder of the Living Theater. Tell about Judith Malina.
She was great. She just passed. I'm happy to report I went to the thing they had at the La Mama.
Memorial.
500. Were you there?
I didn't go.
I was there.
I wanted to go. There was RSVP. We got shut out.
No, you didn't know. You should have known not to listen to that. In that crowd, you just know it's going to be open. You know, it always happens. I mean, you should have known that. But But Judith was there, and there were about 500 people at La Mama. It was wonderful. It was absolutely magnificent. Al Pacino was there. He's famous. He's a famous actor. He was in The Godfather and everything. And he was singing the praises of real theater, which is the living theater. He was saying living theater is real theater. And he was giving the praise to it. And then they had a whole bunch of people. And then we did Tom Walker, who is the guy who's been there since Judith they started it way back with Julian Beck. They started in 1948. They started a theater, and it was wonderful. They were they were avant-garde and everything. They were wonderful. Their Anico tradition, and they've got a fellow in their links in their portfolio He's passed. Murray Bookchin. He was a major person who has been, a lot of people have been overlooked in the mists of history, or drifted into the mists of history, perhaps because some were ahead of their time. My daddy used to say, son, it's good to be ahead of your time, but not too soon.
Too soon.
Now, I don't know if that makes sense, or that's just a tip of the hat to pragmatism or something like that. But Murray Bookchin, I would link to, in a certain sense, back to a major, it's in an anarcho tradition. The
anarchist, anarchal. How do you spell anarchal?
I don't know. ANARCO.
Anarchist,
anarchy. It's a tradition of freedom. But Murray Bookchin, and I'd mentioned earlier, maybe when you look at it, we're 200,000 years on this planet, this species. So that's got to be about 10,000 generations that apparently our species have been. We're all out of Africa. We evolved up, and we went 99% of the way around the world to the east, and represented by our Native American peoples in the Americas that came all the way from Africa, and then Columbus came finally in 1492 to link it up. And where he discovered the new, and they had only gone about 5 degrees.
Did he really discover, or that there's a lot of controversy about Columbus now?
Well, I don't know. Columbus was a great mariner and everything, and but the point being is, you got mankind, and we got the planetariums now. We got Neil deGrasse Tyson. We got physics. We got we got Kaku. We got all these kind of things about understanding in a way. So it's an absolute cornucopia of all kinds of knowledge that's coming to be available to us. Not only now literate knowledge, like Mr. McLuhan used to say, we're getting over literacy. I think that's true. I think literacy is receding, and we're coming into where the medium of record is now multimedia. It's now, you couldn't have had multimedia back in the old days. That's what this whole thing was, that we're transcending a few thousand years of literacy as an organizing principle for Western civilization. That was James Joyce also.
Okay. It sounds like very overwhelming too. Like if there's so much knowledge and how do you focus on what to learn?
No, in my way of thinking, it's appropriate that we think overwhelming rather than normal. Okay. There's so much thinking about as though this period, we're coming up to a presidential election, is like a normal period, like the French Revolution or the 1848 or Marx or something, or all of that kind of thing. When in actual point of fact, and Murray Bookchin I would come back to, because he wrote a book called Post-Scarcity Anarchy. Post-Scarcity.
So in other words, we have enough food to go around. We have enough stuff to go around.
No, that's far too constricted. The issue is one, and then also it would be the major theme. Many have read, and he's got a huge number of people who are in his wake. Is this wonderful fellow, Buckminster Fuller, absolute genius, and he invented the term synergy. He's an inventor, and he invented the term, and there's a geometry of synergy that involves the way the universe is set up. He's a comprehensivist. Now, I would like to think about being a comprehensivist. That is, you can be interested in anything and the relationship between anything else that's among part of the all of what is anything or everything that exists. You can be a comprehensivist. I once looked, that's what he called himself, to identify who he was. He's not a physicist, he's not a doctor, he's not a mathematician. He's all. He's a comprehensive.
So the way colleges.
I'm going to miss the point. The point. I looked it up one time in the dictionary to say comprehensivist. Now that's something that people ought to be aspiring to. Be interested in the patterns between the specializations of what makes up reality is what the world calls for. And I looked it up one time in Wikipedia, the thing where you can get spelling. I looked it up. It said no such word. Everything's being broken down, and the intellectual exercise is getting so specialized out now. Everything now, and in the universities, they're becoming so. There are practically no systems thinkers going on. One book I would have. I mentioned Fuller. He's written all his work. This is a thing I did. This is a chart. Can you come in tight at all? You probably can't. But if you can't, this is a chart to be known to many of Fuller, and this is a major premise. Major premise that motivates my way of thinking, and I think it would be good if it motivated more. How do we deal with the concept of scarcity? What does it mean, scarcity, in terms of the human condition? And this is a chart that Mr. Fuller put together way back in 1952. I don't know if you can read it or not. But what he's dealing with is, and this is a question that could be asked. It'd be, most people would say, who cares? I want to know who's going to win the next election or something. But what does it mean to be a have in evolutionary terms? What does that mean? How do you measure whether somebody is a have? And that could be not only, you brought up, of course, food, the things you have to have in order to survive, but it also involves things like technological knowledge and or the advances of technology now that are coming exponentially. It's exponential now. What's going on with the it's not going to slow down. It's a one-way thing, and exponential is not arithmetic. It's going, and the technological extensions of the Moore's law. It's going beyond Moore's law. And it's coming over now into robotics. So it's coming to affect everything in terms of the human condition, and it doesn't seem to be taken into account what the meaning of that is. So what does it mean to be, Murray Bookchin dealt with it in his book. He was overlooked.
Well, Marcuse too.
Marcuse, some have hinted at it, I think. But by and large, it's thought of as ipso facto on the surface of it. It would be like saying there is enough. Now, wait a minute. If you think like that, if you realize, just think for it for the hell of it or for the heck of it, whatever. So you got 10,000 generations of people who've been surviving. When you're wandering around in the wilderness, he was probably eating a lot of carrion and just dying brutish lives and all that kind of thing, really rough and everything. And then it got to be what finally we discover agriculture. You get Neolithic 10,000 years ago, Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, is China, New World. And you get security, so you get food. You're going to have food, and you're going to have more population and all that kind of thing. But what does it mean to be a have? Mr. Fuller brought it up in serious terms, and I think, and the Buckminster Fuller Institute just a couple of months ago finally put up on their site, it'll be available now, the major work that was done when he was at Carbondale. It was a major study by major intellectuals who were thinking this way. The science design decade, 1965 to 75. And he predicted this chart that I'd shown of Mr. Fuller. This is predicting the percentage of the world population that could be seen to be a have. What does it mean to be a have? We don't take that up seriously because it's ipso facto absurd, because everybody knows there's not nearly enough. For one to win, somebody else has to lose. That's accepted as ipso facto absurd. Anything other, it's a ipso facto absurd that we could ever have as a species within an ecological order a sufficiency. because everything is predicated upon the assumption that there's not nearly enough, there never has been until just maybe now. The thought never comes up in any intellectual circles that it may be that at the level of capability, not the reality. The reality, we have institutions, all of our institutions inherited out of history are outdated, if this is correct, but that we're getting to a point where exponentially it's increasing to where there is enough, materialistically. Now that is heralding a transformation that calls into question the organizing principles of virtually all of our institutions. And it's never mentioned, because it's thought ipso facto absurd. Everybody knows that there's not nearly enough and never can be by the laws of physics, they will try to say. That is not correct, perhaps. And then you had another one, Murray Bookchin did that. And they were celebrating the memory of Murray Bookchin. He wrote post-scarcity. What does it mean? Post-scarcity. That's something, it's never mentioned. That this may be the condition into which we come, and you don't get at it unless you're looking at the big picture in a systems way, and there's practically nowhere where you can go and do systems thinking in the university. Everything is now becoming so specialized, or within, if you get a certain tax rate, then there will be this result, or if you get this Republican or this guy elected, then we might be able to get to be where there can be some elemental justice and so forth. But non-scarcity is a condition in which you could be able to have the full realization of every single human being within a way in which you don't have winners and losers, and you don't have the people that are left behind, as been the case with virtually all of the human society evolutionarily. You'd have a few people eating off gold plates up in the castle on the hill, and everybody else wallowing around in the mud of poverty. That's been the history of the human condition, and in order to win, you had to win out through political power over another group that then you could exploit them and maybe make your life a little bit better, but it's only not nearly enough for all. And that we're transcending that may be the major principle, major characteristic of our moment. Mr. Fuller came up with it that we crossed the 50% mark by there. It's just been put forth. They had the design science decade, 1965 to 70. They're measuring what does it mean to be a have? What's the population trends? What are the production? What can we see? What's coming economically? What's coming cybernetically? All of that. And they've now just put it up on the Buckminster Fuller Institute. That's a major source. And that's a source where people could go to investigate this concept. I'm a little bit upset that it never comes up anywhere in terms of the public dialogue.
Coming up here.
No, well, yeah, but this doesn't count. I mean, I'm talking about like, it should be like at the think tank. It should be over the door of the Situation Room for the President of the United States. If there is, we come from a time when there's never nearly enough. We're coming to a time where we have enough for all, so people don't have to starve in order for some to be able to live off golden platters. And to accept that is something that seems not to be, it's thought of as being just, that's being thought of as weirdly idealistic.
A Marxist.
No, I wouldn't think so, because what you're talking about, it affects all the economics and so forth. Bernie Sanders is making a big thing now, and you see, oh, they just had a wonderful program. I'm sorry, I'm ranting. No, so that's the thing that I think ought to be considered by the intellectual community writ large. Is that maybe this moment is not your normal time. It's a moment of transformative capability that's inherent in the evolutionary process, that's unique to our generation. And to think that after 10,000 generations, this is the defining generation on evolutionary terms, not just political. Or, you know, if you understand what I'm saying, it's a time of evolutionary transformation from transcending from scarcity to sufficiency, so that every human being would be able to, it's possible to see every human being realizing their full potential within a system's understanding of a system in universe. That wouldn't it be great if everybody was able to realize their full potentiality with everyone else relating to everyone else like that? There would be a synergistic resonancy. A synergistic resonancy of a maximally engaged system is what a human being is. 100 trillion cells in a human organism. Each one is independent of themselves, their own right, and so forth, and they form a system. And the system has a resonancy. And you had a liberated humanity and an ecology. Now, this is becoming available to us through our extended technological capability that's coming in cornucopia terms at a systems level of understanding. Then that would be a resonancy that would interaccommodate us to a universe that might connect us to a universe at a level transcendent to what we've been for 200,000 years. That we're at that time of a period. It's not just another moment but it affects everything. And so that's something that is motivating to me. It's an autodidactic paradise we live in now, and it's available to everybody with a little cell phone. Everybody can have access to the kind of information. And there's a lot of other things like that, but I wish there could be more. So that's a major premise that motivates my life, is trying to understand what in the world is going on evolutionarily. And so I'm sorry, I went off on a rant.
Well, you call it a rant, but I think it's a couple of things are going on. Number one, I think you're very passionate about these ideas, and you feel strongly about them, and you want to articulate them out to a wider audience. And I think you ought to have a wider platform to say these things, I think. And also other people who are saying these things ought to be saying them at wider venues. I mean, imagine if you could be at Madison Square Garden saying this in front of 50,000 people. That, but we have online now, and what means we have media that we have to take charge of and expand this knowledge that you have, that I have, that you now shared with our audience, and try to think of how we can get the message out to larger people. I also believe, and I agree with you, Harold, that there's more than enough to go around. And
can you see there never has been?
Because of technology.
Today, this moment, there never it's new. It's a new situation.
Because I got that from Marcuse, from reading Marcuse and One-Dimensional Man, and especially Eros and Civilization, when he makes the point that it's a false. It's kind of a propagandistic thing, that they want everyone to think that there's not enough to go around, when there is enough to go around.
There was not enough. There was never
but now there
enough.
is. Yes.
In terms, if you measure that in terms of the transformative moment we're in now. Yeah, one part of being a have is you can get on an aeroplane in New York and get to Los Angeles in 3 hours. You could not have done that in 1900 no matter what. But that's part of a have. Or there's going to be other things that are going to be part of what it means to be a have. Information availability, things that are coming in Niagara proportions, and it's the capability, it's not the inherited institutions. The inherited institutions have a definite conservative thing. We're tied into the buildings, the architecture, the way of thought, thinking, and everything like that. But this is unique. This is a unique time. Now, that's the point, really.
You had 5 presidential candidates that you interviewed over the years, okay? And I ran for president myself in 2012, and I was calling for a 25-hour work week. And that's an idea I got from our friend Stanley Aronowitz, who's been saying that we are overworked in our society. People are putting in 50, 60-hour weeks. They come home, they're exhausted. How can anybody be an autodidact? How can anybody have time to study, to watch MNN, to read Bucky Fuller, to read Marcuse, to get involved in politics, to become active, if they're working 60 hours a week? But they don't need to work 60 hours a week. I want to know what's going on in these jobs. Are they shuffling paper back and forth?
I think the problem, if you read Piketty, Thomas Piketty, I don't know if you read Piketty, but he's just enunciating it and everything like that. But we've got to be a little bit understanding that we're talking about a change that is so large, it's hard to get your mind around. And I think the reverse is happening. Is that the The information technology is now migrating not only from information technology, but to robotics. Robotics are coming, and the robotics are able to do things. I just talked to Maggie. She was at the store. They have a checkout now at a store. You go to a store, and they got the thing, and there's you go to buy some groceries or something, and you go, if you only have cash, you go somewhere you talk to a person. Otherwise, you just put it through. Wow. It goes through, and it rings it all up, and it's all on the bill, and they have it all there. And pretty soon you're going to be, it's not going to be too long before you're going to be able to get whatever you want, and you'll be able to get it sent. They'll be delivering it with drones. No, or what they're doing, and that applies to things like bureaucracy filling out forms. They can be done autonomically. They can eliminate the need for the input of human activity to the productive process. Good. These things are going to be turning out capability and learning and so forth that is not anything like what we've ever had. And so that's a completely different reading of it. I think the problem is, how are we going to distribute effective buying power to the masses of the people who are not needed? I was from Detroit. They needed, Henry Ford used to tinker in my grandmother's garage back in the early time of the year. But they needed those guys to turn the nuts. And they need people now. But now it's make work. It's make work that could be done, and those systems, those automatic systems, can put it on automatic and produce and be doing it within an ecologically appropriate way, and with a way that could free people up to be autodidactically interested in something other than how in the hell are they going to get food to eat, which is the thing that they're all wage slaves. They're doing it because they have to do something. They have to try and get a job for somebody in order to have a justification for them to get some money for doing something in their life. And but the production is being taken over by capital instruments. The actual production, the trend is the capital instrument, and they're all owned by a tiny plutocratic class. There's a few people, the 1% of the people own all the assets that are actually producing the wealth. People aren't needed like they were. In order to do it, you had to have slaves, remember? Right. You had to have slaves. We still got slaves. Right. And we still think about dividing, sending in. The only way for a person to get money is to have a job, or for the mass, and the ownership of the assets, the robots, and the assets that are turning out the wealth, and doing it in a way that's it's going again exponential. It's not going just arithmetic, it's exponential, and we're being caught up in it. And the problem is, like Mr. Piketty and others, is that the problem is we got an ability, and we talked before about abundance. You're talking about, and the book, DeMonte's books is really to be recommended. The one he and Kurzweil has set up Singularity University at Palo Alto. That's a study of these kind of things, very much abundance and everything like that. And we're getting to that kind of a. We're getting to that kind of a point where they're not going to be needed, but they have to have some way, the left, let's say, has to have some way of distributing buying power to the people. If they can produce all kinds of things, there's got to be a way for there to be income in their hands to clear the market, if nothing else.
So I want to say some things now.
A way of distributing effective demand.
I have to pull the microphone back now because I want to try to say some things as well. You're saying some great, wonderful things, but also I think ranting is necessary. But we start with the rant and then we move towards how do we actually make the transformation. And like I said earlier, I ran for president in 2012. I said some of the things that you're talking about. I didn't get any votes. I didn't even vote for myself because I was ambivalent about my campaign, so that didn't go. But anyway, now I'm focusing all my energy on writing. I'm focused on writing.
Okay,
I'm focusing on this television show. I'm also working on a one-man play, a one-man show that I'm going to be articulating some of these things. And at the same time, I think that what we really need is a political party that will put forth this these ideas that you're talking about here, Harold, and articulate it in a way that people can understand, that will resonate with people, okay? The average everyday people and the intelligentsia, that it will resonate across the board. So, but I think you're a person having a dialogue, and I think having these conversations with you are helpful. And I just want to, before we're out of time, Claudia gave us we have about 8 minutes left. These are some of the people Harold has had conversations with over the years. Judy Molina, I said. Jerry Brown.
Yeah.
Robert McNeil of the McNeil Era News Hour.
Yeah.
Richard Branson.
Yeah, an entrepreneur, Virgin.
Okay.
Nice guy. Right.
Okay. Sanford Weill.
Yeah.
Hubert Humphrey.
Yeah, he was good. I liked him. Yeah.
Timothy Leary.
Interesting guy. Yeah.
Gary Hart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ram Dass.
Ramdas. Yeah.
Ram Dass. Okay.
Alpert, he was called. It was his name. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he was a great guy.
He said, "Be here now." I love that. Be here now. I said that in my classroom the other day. I'm teaching at NJIT. I teach a class, and my students were all excited. I said, "Let's just relax and be here now."
Yeah, thank you.
Be here. Thank you, Ram Dass. Thank you, Ram Dass. Okay. You had on Rollo May.
Yeah, I love it. I hung out in Jerusalem together in 1974.
And Rollo May is important.
He had fun at the church.
You guys
He was funny. He had a great sense of humor.
I read Rollo May before I became a teacher. He was influential.
Rollo.
Rollo. Is it Rollo?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Anyway.
Nice guy. Anyway, real nice guy.
Love his work on love. He wrote a book called Love and Will,
Good
which
sense
was
of humor.
Yes. He was a great philosopher.
With the nuns, and I mean in a playful way.
In a good way. Okay. B.F. Skinner.
B.F. Skinner I did at Harvard. Yeah.
Okay. Abby.
Beyond freedom and dignity. Isn't that funny? Okay. Beyond freedom and dignity. Once we get past freedom and dignity, everything's easy.
Well, I'm critical of Skinner but that's a whole other show. Yeah, okay. I'm a Rogerian. Anyway.
Rogers, Carl Rogers,
one of my heroes. One of my heroes.
Great guy, yeah.
Okay. Abby Hoffman. You had Abby Hoffman.
Abby. He was a trip. He was really interesting. He was really funny. Okay. He had the other guy. What was Jerry Rubin? They were together. His wife, his lady Anna, I did a program with too. I did a program with Abby where we did it. He had been just coming up from being, on the lam and everything, and they did it. And we went to the place where to do the program, and they had turned off his electricity. And we had to bring in the electricity from the apartment above down the outside and bring it in to do it. I got to find the tape. I got that tape.
Yes.
And then Joanna is her name. Okay. She was running the chess shop downtown. She's wonderful. Yeah.
Abby Hoffman had a book called Steal This Book.
Steal This Book, yeah. They were yipsters.
Yippies, the yippies. Okay. Now, you went from Abby Hoffman to George Romney.
George Romney,
the father of Mitt Romney. Couldn't get more conservative.
That was Michigan, yeah.
Okay.
Well, no,
I'm saying
I'm not a leftist or anything particularly. I'm for. In fact, I'm thinking what it is. Yeah. The comprehensive thing makes it possible to get over all that stuff. I'm for a system of economics. Everything's economics in terms of politics and everything. Yeah. I'm for a guy, and I tell you, they just had it on the NewsHour. NewsHour is a major source.
Well, Robert McNeil, we just made. Yeah.
Well, no, they had it last week.
Okay.
They had the program on Thursday with that guy, Solomon or something, but it was about the brewery factory. And that's a brewery factory that ties into your Bernie Sanders. Yeah. Because Bernie Sanders' main thing that he has that's really unique to him is he's an advocate, long-term, on Tom Hartman. He's been on that, an advocate, left wing, liberal. Let's be getting some help for the people. You know what he supports? Economically, he supports employee stock ownership plans. Employee stock ownership plans, a way for the employees to gain access to capital that will pay for itself out of its future earnings the way the wealthy do, as a way of getting effective demand to the masses. And that's invented by Louis Kelso. Okay. He's somebody that's on there. He invented that, and the title of his book is The Capitalist Manifesto. That's something that could bring in right-wing people. Okay. And they need something, because I'll tell you, that right-wing contingent that they put her through that thing, Miss Hillary.
Yeah.
That's like some sort of insane asylum. They really are off. They're really off base, and there should be some way to bring in the Republican and the Democrat, because what you want to get at is something that can be inclusive of everybody.
Speaking of which,
beyond politics.
Speaking of which, look, you had on Barry Goldwater, Barbara Ehrenreich, George Stoney, Ed Asner, Stanley Aronowitz, as we said, William Baruti, Jack Valenti from Showbiz, from Hollywood, Isaac Asimov, the great science fiction writer, Pete Seeger, you had on Pete Seeger, Richie Havens.
Richie Havens was a real close friend,
My gosh, Robert Thurman, the great Buddhist scholar, Gil Noble. Remember Gil?
Of course. Gil Noble.
Like it is.
Great. ABC was a pioneer in that,
Okay, Kevin Phillips, the great intellectual and historian, John MacArthur.
Arthur. Harper Magazine, right.
Lloyd Benson, remember Lloyd Benson?
I do.
He was with, running for vice president, and Muammar Gaddafi. How did you get Gaddafi?
A lot. I was really angry with the Obama administration and Hillary for doing that. They did to them. I think that was a big mistake.
Created instability.
It did, and everything, and I think it was a lack of understanding. I think personally that I'm for Bucky Fuller, transcendent materials, and then economics is Louis Kelso, and all of those things were incorporated in a thing of a people Congress way of organizing society and so forth, and not celebrating the work ethic. They had signs everywhere in Colombia. I mean, in Libya, I loved it. I went there 8 or 9 times. I thought it was great. They were ahead historically, like the United States was ahead of feudalism in Europe when they made their revolution in 1776. Then they came and burned because we were against them. That's the thing. They're still tied into this labor theory of value and the idea the left wing has died. The left wing's got to get off its duff and get out of their swoon to Marx and all of that. You don't want, you have to do some way to get capital assets as ownership, private property in the hands of the masses of the people and as a way to distribute effective buying power of the cornucopia of abundance that is here before us when we get a system right. And they don't have it anywhere because they're all caught up with the outdated.
So what we have here is ideas, incredible ideas that have been said here. But also, I want to sort of close on the note of conversation, on the importance of people talking to each other. And I can't wait. When this is over, we're going to go back to just talking, and we're going to have cupcakes and coffee.
You brought cupcakes. Boy, I'll tell you, Claudia brought cupcakes. Love her.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on final note, how can Americans have better conversations?
I don't know. I think is to just have I think the best thing they could do is to begin to start thinking autodidactically and thinking about we're all in this. We got to have something that involves everybody. We got real problems. There should be systems thinking. Education should be encouraged autodidactically, and people can see they don't have to be tied into only a place to go to get money in order to be able to live. And that's the only thing that seems to motivate most people. That's unfortunate. We need some more free-thinking, educational individuals.
I think this is only a beginning, Harold, because we could go on with this. It's a wonderful conversation. Thank you. We love you so much, Harold, and we thank you for your leadership and your guidance. And we're going to continue to be in conversation with you.
Well, I just wish they could pick up, the ideas could pick. I don't know. Maybe not. They won't. They don't seem to be. It's just always just ipso facto absurd.
Claudia says we're out of time.
We're out of time. There's a tyranny in television, folks.
Good night, folks.
Maybe even in evolution there's a tyranny. We got to get it right soon, okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Thanks for viewing. Thanks, Claudia. Thanks,
Claudia.
Claudia, here for Claudia and Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Yes, absolutely.
Indeed.